By premiering his latest play in London, David Mamet might have hoped to get an easier ride than on Broadway. Well, if he did, he didn't bargain for the London critics. Even recruiting John Malkovich, one of the finest stage actors of his generation, to make a rare West End appearance, couldn't sweeten the critics' reaction to bitter wheat. A flabby, cynical and pointless effort, cried Tim Barlow in The Stage. Lazy, crude and empty, railed Henry Hitchens in the Evening Standard. Michael Billington of The Guardian called it ineffectual, which was quite restrained compared with a hot mess of gauche plotting, unfinished ideas and sheer wrong-headedness. It might just be the most pointless play of the year. That from Alice Jones writing in The Eye. Politically it's tiresome, theatrically it's loopy, said Ollie Williams in Time Out. It manages to spend 2 hours saying very little at all, moaned Greg Stewart in Theatre Weekly. And as flaccid as a deflated balloon, lamented Matt Truman in Variety. For Debbie Gilpin on the Broadway World website, it lacks clarity and intent. Implausible, daft and irritating, said Alex Sertz on the Arts Desk, sounding slightly irritated. And Dominic Maxwell of The Times called it a wonky piece of theatre. Bitter wheat is a bitter disappointment, said Dominic Cavendish in the Daily Telegraph. You see what he did there? Distasteful and misjudged, don't begin to describe it, said Mark Shenton in londontheatre.co.uk. Well, OK, Mark, so what would describe it? Stupefyingly silly and frequently offensive. Well, I did ask. The star ratings tell it all. I've only found one of the overnight reviews that gave more than 2 stars, and that was a 3-star review from David Lister in The Independent, and even he said Malkovich deserved a more rounded and thought-provoking play. So what was it they didn't like? 5 themes emerged from the reviews. First, there was the thin to non-existent story. It's a satire about a movie mogul who abuses his position. The main character is Barney Fine, played by John Malkovich. For Theatre Weekly, it's not the story being told, or even the person telling the story that's the issue, it's that it lacks any kind of challenge to the audience, and the instances of clever writing are drowned out. Mamet's play lurches from set piece to set piece and tone to tone in search of a good enough counterpoint to its awful anti-hero. Complained What's on Stage, continuing, it is really not a play at all, but an unfocused and tawdry howl of anger. A classic of lazy playwriting, said Alex Sertz in the Arts Desk. The New York Times weighed in with, bitter wheat, bilious to a fault, also feels scattershot and lazy. For Time Out, it was a play of 2 halves. She seemed to enjoy the first act, but definitely not the second. Typical Mamet fast-paced sarcastic exchanges with some zinging insults revealing the hollow nature of Hollywood and ultimately pitting a smart young woman against the sleazy older man. But the extremely brief and sketchy second half is just bizarre. Sounds like it might be a good idea to leave at the interval because it feels like a first draft. Its silly and unsatisfactory second half needs rewriting, said The Times, bluntly. Here's Variety. The plot creaks with convenient firearms and useful idiots. It's lazy, and that's before Mamet gives up on a short second half that piles on a bonfire of improbabilities. Oh, and that's the 4th time the word lazy has been deployed. Mamet doesn't even bother to give his play a proper ending, gasped the Eye. But Bitter Wheat clearly has at least some signs of classic Mamet. The Times describes a scene that depicts a moment of sexual threat with such horrible ordinariness that you feel as if you are locked in the room with its characters. It's an unforgettable, unhysterical scene. Secondly, there's the disappointing dialogue. Given Mamet's expertise and the sensitivity of the subject matter, what's surprising is just how dashed off the dialogue seems, said the Daily Telegraph, continuing, where once Mamet's lines zinged, too often they wheeze on Zimmers. There's more chaff than wheat here. Dominic Cavendish's earlier bitter disappointment inspiring another pun on the title. Some jokes land, others go thud, said the Times, not referring to his fellow critics' puns. The Stage quite liked the entertaining dialogue, but found it empty of revelation. The critics found the main character just as lacking in depth as the plot. This is a vehicle for pithy lines that don't amount to a character, said the Stage. The Evening Standard made the same point. The role lacks psychological depth. Fine is a profane, abusive, creepy figure, but essentially he's just a conduit for Mamet's vitriolic lines. Bitter Wheat never fully reveals the psychological depths of this depraved character, agreed The Independent. The sorrow fact is that Fine never deepens or darkens, said the New York Times. The hero is unrelievably vicious, said The Guardian. And for what's on stage, Fine is a pantomime villain, a buffoon rather than a real threat. Did the other characters make up for the failure to create a believable central character? I'm afraid not. The rest of the cast are merely decoration around him, treated in various shades of contempt and dismissal, said Theatre Weekly, contemptuously and dismissively. None of his characters are psychologically credible, noted Variety. They were, said What's on Stage, virtually unplayable and criminally underwritten roles. At least put a teeny bit of effort into any of the other characters, pleaded The Stage. And damning with faint praise, Time Out declared, the best things about Bitter Wheat really are the women, even though their parts are thin. Finally, the critics didn't like Mamet's viewpoint, particularly his male viewpoint. Where angels fear to tread in the aftermath of Me Too, Mamet appears to have jumped in with both hobnail-booted feet. Written by a man and from a male perspective, the whole thing leaves you feeling grubby, shuddered Time Out. Variety summed up, he ends up exploiting the experiences of assault survivors for entertainment. And Broadway World felt the same. It does ask that we rehash all those harrowing Me Too revelations for entertainment, but hardly shedding any new light. And furthermore, she said, women's voices are once again being drowned out by that of a man. The Eye got the same impression. The victim is relegated to literally watching men talk to each other from the sidelines. The Eye continues, it's as if he wants to write about anything except the effects of sexual assault and what should happen to the perpetrators. So, those are the 5 major reasons the critics didn't like Bitter Wheat, but what about John Malkovich? Surely he offered some compensation. Not according to The Stage. Malkovich, obviously a brilliant actor, isn't brilliant here. He delivers everything in an unceasing monotone, like someone is doing some drilling next door. And Time Out found he plays Fine as wholly unpleasant. He's not nuanced. Broadway World was another who couldn't muster any enthusiasm. A passable performance from Malkovich cannot save this play or make it something it's not. The Arts Desk concluded, at times his performance is fun, at times it's funny, but over time, it's a bore. Oh dear. What's on Stage starts by describing Malkovich as one of the most charismatic and dangerous actors of his generation, but goes on to say, even his light seems dulled. Fine actor though he is, Malkovich has to work overtime to invest a character who claims people are animals with any light and shade, said The Guardian. Others were more impressed by him. The Daily Telegraph praised Malkovich's ability to hold our attention, and before concluding on a downbeat note, he's not enough to tip the balance fully in the evening's favour. But The Independent had this to say, John Malkovich, prowling the stage like a bloated, warped colossus, is present on stage throughout and dominates it with a towering performance. And the Times positively raved. You expect him to be good, but he still astounds with quite how sharp and unyielding and calmly powerful a presence he is. We can conclude from the reviews that while much was promised in this comedy by David Mamet starring John Malkovich about one of today's important issues, little was delivered. But not everyone who's seen it agreed. An actual movie star, Rupert Grint, who should know whereof he speaks, said it showed the reality behind the scenes in the entertainment world. And even if this is not Mamet's finest hour, it's still a rare opportunity to see John Malkovich on stage. So, if the reviewers haven't put you off, you can see Bitter Wheat at the Garrick Theatre in London until the 21st of September 2019. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see more of my reviews and reviews of the reviews, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, 1 Minute Theatre Reviews.